Welcome to Bourbon School. It's Bryan, and if you watched our video Tuesday about my trip to Kentucky, you know we saw a lot, and now it's time to show you what we brought home with us. Okay, so we should preface all this by saying that my wife and I have our 20th anniversary coming up in August. So this trip was my anniversary gift. I got her something sparkly, and she got me a boatload of bourbon. So we had a great time with our friends and went to a lot of stores. I didn't film all of them. Some of them, sometimes you don't get the feel that they'd be real receptive to you filming in their store. So there were a couple I didn't film in, and I'll tell you which ones where I did find some stuff and buy some stuff, but the ones that you saw in the video last week are where I got most of this stuff. So without further ado, let's get into it. So our first store we went to was Total Wine. It was in Louisville, and I had never been to a Total Wine before. So this was really exciting because I hear a lot of other YouTubers who live in states where Total Wine is talk about all the great things they find. And I will say overall in Kentucky, most of what we found was similar to what we find here. But they did have some bottles that I did have on my list that just aren't available in New York. And then some other kind of nice surprises that I was able to snag that I wasn't really expecting to find just sitting on the shelf. So first off, the first thing I got, and this was something that was on my list, is Green River. So I bought the wheated and I bought the regular bourbon. This is something they don't have in New York State. And it's not an expensive bottle. They were $35 a piece. But these are bottles I've been wanting. You see other channels talking about them, reviewing them, and they say they're really, really good. I haven't had great luck with Green River bourbon. The Bradshaw was not so hot. And what is the other one? Oh, the Wheel Horse. We didn't like the Wheel Horse either, but I figured for $35 it was worth a shot. So these were the first two things I put in my cart when we arrived at Total Wine. Okay, next thing I grabbed at Total Wine was a Knob Creek Single Barrel Select. This is their store pick. I have one of the best bourbons I've had recently was a Knob Creek store pick at my buddy Greg's house, and so I wanted to make sure I got one for myself. I do have a reserve, but this is a select, so I wanted to make sure I grabbed one of those. So that went in the cart. Next, a Jim Beam Single Barrel. I am not always a huge fan of something that says Jim Beam on it, but I've heard so many people say this is a good bottle. It's 108 proof, and it was like $28 or maybe $30. And it's funny because when I met up with Sean at Whiskey Wars, we saw it in another store. He's like, have you had one of these? And I was like, no. He's like, oh, you got to get one. And I was like, oh, I got one this weekend. So I'm excited to try that out. Maybe it'll change my mind on that Jim Beam label. All right, next. Oh, they had a Yellowstone. They actually had 3 Yellowstone barrel picks at Total Wine, 3 different ones. They all had different names. This one's called Tobacco Barn. It's 109 proof. And I've been wanting to try a Yellowstone. Actually, though, after I bought this, we went to Limestone Branch and did a flight of Yellowstones, and we were a little underwhelmed. Although I will say that the single barrel at the higher proof like this was the best one we tried. So I'm optimistic about it. But I wanted to have one of these, and so I snagged one at Total Wine. We got a lot at Total Wine. Next, I got a Benchmark Top Floor. I just recently bought the full proof, and I wanted to get the top floor. I don't know if there's many other benchmarks I really want to try, but I did want to try this one. And again, you can't beat the price on these. They're like $20-some. So I figured if I'm filling my cart, I might as well add a top floor to it. Next, still all Total Wine. I got a Rebel cask strength, and again, store pick. I knew we were going to Lux Row later or the next day, but this was a store pick, so I wanted to grab one. I have a Ezra Brooks cask strength, which is the regular bourbon. This is the wheated. So I'm optimistic. I really do like the Ezra Brooks, and that is also a store pick. So I'm optimistic about another Lux Row store pick. So Ezra Brooks cask strength. And then finally, and this was like the big get for me. This is something we don't see in New York really ever. And it wasn't something I really was thinking I wanted, but when you see it on the shelf and it's like, oh my gosh. So I got it. Might not be a big deal to you guys, but I got a Booker's. This is a Charlie's batch. They had several on the shelf. If you saw the video Tuesday, I showed there was 3 or 4 on the shelf, but I passed it by a few times. And then finally, my buddy Andy that was with me grabbed one, and I was like, I honestly won't see one on the shelf anywhere here in Western New York. So I'm going to grab one and kind of see what it's all about with Booker's, because I've never had one before. So I did grab a Booker's at Total Wine. So that is our Total Wine haul. Okay, so the rest of the day in Louisville, we spent a lot of time in the city. We went to Old Forester. Did not find a single barrel strength, although they were in the process. We're walking by the bottling line and they're bottling a single barrel proof for a store in California. And it was like a knife in the heart. I was dying inside. I want one so bad. And the only one we really found in a store was about $180. And actually, Sean told me that's actually kind of good compared to what they're going to for, but I was not prepared to spend $180. You know our rule. I mean, that Booker's is the only thing I broke our rule on. It was $97. So I did spend more than $75 on that. But everything else here fits our rule. It's under $75. And I think hopefully they're all worth it. So then we went to Liquor Barn. Okay. And Liquor Barn was also in Louisville. And I only got a few things there, but I did find some good ones. So I finally found a JTS Brown Bonded. David from Whiskey Row is really high on this. He says it's a great value and a great bottled and bond whiskey. So I did grab one of these. This was like $14. So we'll do a 30-second review on this and let you know. Generally, I am afraid of a $14 bourbon, but I hear this one's great. So we're going to give it a shot. Next, I have heard a lot about Huling Station, Old Dominick Huling Station. I actually have seen the single barrel on Sealbox and never pulled the trigger. And somebody reviewed this recently. And I was like, ooh, that's interesting. I didn't know they made a single barrel. And I texted Ben from Bourbon Note because I thought it was them. I was like, hey, you reviewed this, right? He's like, I've never even heard of it. So I don't know who it was that reviewed it, but if you're watching this, you can let us know. But this is a single barrel, 112.99 proof, aged 5 years, and it's a Liquor Barn pick. So I'm pretty excited to crack this one and get to know a little bit about this distillery and their whiskey. Next, this is still at Liquor Barn, and this was the best thing we found. Okay, the Maker's Mark BEP. You can see I already got into it a little bit at the house we were in Bardstown. But I actually grabbed 2 of these, one for me, one for Lauren, because we all know how much she loves Maker's Mark. So, Lauren, if I don't see you before this comes out, spoiler, you're getting one. But they had plenty of these. And actually, we saw these in several places. Some places had it marked up. We went to one liquor store in Bardstown, and it was $99. They had this at Liquor Barn for retail, $70. It was the same price they were selling it for at the distillery at Maker's Mark. So that was a good deal. And like I said, grab 2 so we could each have one. And then, my last Louisville story, and this is so wonderful. So we go to the Evan Williams Experience. And it was nice. We went upstairs and we had a drink, some cocktails upstairs, and we chatted and whatever. And then they were getting ready to close up, so we went back down to the gift shop. And I just, on my way out, I asked one of the guys behind the counter, I'm like, hey, you don't have any Elijah Craig barrel proof, do you? And he's like, I do. Because they didn't have any on the shelf. So I just asked, like, I do. And I was like, it's probably like A123. He's like, no, it's the B batch. And I was like, oh boy. So he's like, I could sell you one. So I got an Elijah Craig barrel proof B523. So I think Lauren and I are going to do a little comparison video, the A and the B batch, and then hopefully we can snag a C batch in September and maybe compare all 3. But I was really excited to to get this. It was this was probably the best get of the trip. And you can see it's open. I haven't had this. This is the sample that went home with Sean because he can't even find one down in Kentucky. So the Elijah Craig comparison coming soon to a YouTube channel near you. And then that was pretty much all Louisville. So we got a ton in Louisville, and I really was like, well, that's kind of a good haul. I don't really need any more. And actually the next day in Bardstown, I actually bought a lot less. We didn't find a lot more. A lot of the stores have a very similar selection, so we didn't find any really great, amazing things in the other stores. Okay. So Bardstown, everybody in our group, the four of us, all wanted to go to Maker's Mark. We all wanted to go dip bottles to kind of have that experience. My wife and I wanted to dip a bottle for each of our kids to give them when they're 21. And so we found these really cool, these are distillery exclusives. They are like the Founders series, Maker's Mark. It's just Maker's Mark, but they've got Bill Sr., and Marjorie, and then they also have a Bill Jr. bottle. And I dipped these for my kids, or we dipped them for our kids. And then I also dipped a couple for my buddies. So we bought, I think, 4 or 5 bottles of this. But they're really cool. They're a little more expensive. I think these are about $65. But it's a distillery exclusive. It's something special. And they even put your initials and the date on the bottom. For us, we could remember whose is whose. But it's also kind of a nice touch, when you give it to them, it's dated. So you can kind of commemorate when you did it. All right. So that was fun. Maker's Mark is really cool. The shop's really nice. They have some nice stuff. And they had the BEP there for $70. And they actually had a little sign that said, we're not going to try and compete with local liquor stores. So they kind of set their prices at a reasonable rate. They don't upcharge you. So that was nice. The rest of the day in Bardstown, we toured around to several distilleries. I didn't really find anything that really blew my mind. I wasn't like really dying to grab anything. So the only other thing that I got after dinner, we spent the day with Sean and his wife Millie. They were awesome. Subscribe to Whiskey Wars. It's got a great channel, also Mash and Metal, if you're into the heavy metal music. But after dinner, we were right across the street from a store called Toddy's Liquors. And I had gone through it once, and this is where I saw the Old Forester barrel strength for $180. And so I was like, nah, I'm not really into that because the upcharging and stuff. But Sean was like, oh, that's a great store. We got to go in. They usually get some good picks. And this is one I had overlooked, and actually we both bought one. It was a 1792 single barrel pick. So it's got the little Toddy's Liquor sticker there. I am not a huge fan of small batch. I do really like the full proof, and I just finished a store pick of the full proof recently, and I'm having trouble locating another one. But I figured we'd give the single barrel a try. It is 98.6 proof, so it's a little hotter than the small batch, and it's a single barrel, so it's unique. So we each snagged one. They had a deal. It was like 2 for $70 or something. So we got a little package deal on buying these, and he grabbed a couple others. I can't remember what he did, but. So Toddy's ended up being kind of the second time around, and maybe going somebody who's a little more familiar with it. It was actually a decent store once you stopped and looked around a little more. But that was really it for Bardstown, the few bottles at Maker's Mark and the single barrel 1792. So our final day, kind of on the drive home, we stopped. I wanted to go to the Party Source. It's right at the border of Kentucky and Cincinnati. It's the liquor store that used to be owned by Ken Lewis, who now owns New Riff. So, and it was crazy. I didn't realize, like, I've heard people say, oh, New Riff's right across the street. It is literally in the same parking lot. So we went to the Party Source and we went to New Riff. So at the Party Source, the only thing I got was a bottle of Early Times. And I got to say, I was kind of disappointed in the selection in Party Source. They had a huge bourbon section. If you watched the video on Tuesday, you would have seen it was pretty extensive, but not a lot of crazy stuff. And when we asked them about, like, do you have anything rare, maybe harder to find, they really don't. They did say they had some bottles for raffle, but nothing really spectacular that I would really go after. But they did have lots of early times bottled in bond, so I got a backup bottle. I'm actually about to kill one bottle, and I have another one over here that's close to being, well, I guess not close to being done, but we have cracked it already. So now I've got a backup for that. So that was it at the Party Source. And then when we went across the street to New Riff, I get a couple of bottles. The first thing I got, and this, not a bourbon, but I really did want to try, especially with summer coming. I do like to sip on gin and soda with some lime. So I did get their Kentucky Wild Gin. They also did have a bourbon barrel aged gin, but at that point, I think I was close to having enough. So I didn't grab the bourbon barrel one, especially because I don't know. I think I probably am more confident about a gin I haven't tried than a bourbon barrel. It might not taste to my liking. So we got the Kentucky Wild Gin, and then the last bottle we got was again at New Riff, and this was a distillery exclusive. So this is Silver Grove Barrel Proof bourbon. It is 113 proof, and we were able to try this at the bar beforehand, and it's very good. And it's to commemorate the bottling of Silver Grove bourbon. I think they've got like a Silver Grove like warehouse or rickhouse facility that this is kind of in salute to or in honor of. So it's a limited edition. Again, you can only get it at the distillery. So we do like New Riff here. And so I figured distillery exclusive, I won't be able to find it anywhere. So I grabbed one. So that's it. That's our bottle haul. I was pretty happy. I came home a happy man and found a lot of great bottles and a lot of things that I'm excited to crack and that we'll be excited to review here on the channel. So stay tuned, and all these bottles we have here, we're going to talk about and make videos on in the future. So if you like our channel and what we're doing, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you never miss another episode of Bourbon School. Cheers, everybody.